Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the O'Collies post-game coverage of OSU's 27-13 victory over West Virginia. I'm Ryan Novozinsky, joined here, as always, by fellow beat writer for the O'Collies, Sudeep Tumma. Today, we're going to be talking about this game that OSU just had, and specifically some of the things that went into this victory for the Cowboys. Namely, let's start with this. Let's start with LD Brown and sort of what he was able to do today, Sudeep.
Man, LD Brown had a great first game, right? Contributions came out of nowhere. Obviously, he had that 50-yard run that was wiped away in the first game. This game, he came out explosive once again. And truth be told, he looked like this doesn't seem as crazy as it should. But he seemed like he was a better back than Chuba Hubbard, right? Heisman winner, Chuba Hubbard. LD Brown's explosive once again. Showed off his speed, physicality, vision, burst, speed, just breakaway speed. He's a track runner, or he looks like he should be a track runner. He was great again. And Casey Dunn kind of alluded to this, that when you take Chuba Hubbard off the field, you're really not dropping off, right? Your production level is not coming off. You don't have to call different plays. You don't have to be more conservative. The defense doesn't get to take a rest because you still have LD Brown. LD Brown is slowly becoming a household name.
Oh, definitely. And I heard on the broadcast there, Dan Orlovsky said it. He was saying how LD Brown today just looked more explosive out there. And you can tell that, he's getting better in between the tackles. He's getting better with his elusivity. He's getting better at this speed. He's so much bigger guy, but also so much of a quicker guy as well. What an off-season program he must have had and done to himself, because he's really stepping in now, and he's in his senior year. It's not like he's like some young guy out here. He's a guy that's stepping in at the right time and stepped in today at the right time, specifically when Chuba Hubbard was struggling.
Yeah, and what you already knew about LD Brown was his speed, right? This guy was already one of the fastest players on the team. But that didn't help him make a true impact last year, right? He still struggled a lot because he wasn't great in between the tackles. Now you're seeing that. You're seeing that ability to just run through, be physical. So he looks bigger, right?
Yeah.
You see all these elements, and you get a true number two back who's making a true impact. And he really helped, more than just his production, more than just another guy. He helped ignite this run game, right? When they were really struggling, and you had Shane Ellingworth, the true freshman, you wanted that run game to help, right? Especially when the defense was playing the way it was. You wanted that run game to really complement this entire team. But you didn't have that because Chuba Hubbard was struggling for some reason, right? His fumbles obviously were there. Overall, just struggles, but LD Brown really helped this team.
Undoubtedly, and credited the offensive line after the game, and obviously you and I love LD Brown off the field too. He's a really interesting guy, really funny guy too. And like I believe it was Gavin Lang today who said everybody is rooting for LD Brown to do well, and he certainly did so today. Now, let's talk about another guy in the backfield there for OSU. Let's talk about Shane Ellingworth. What did you think of his, now in game 2 for him, in his first ever start? There was sort of a debate whether he would start today or Spencer would start today. Gundy said that Spencer's about 80% of the way back to being back to normal. But, I thought today was a little bit more, he had some issues. Like, he had some of his freshman mistakes, I guess you can call them. But still showed flashes of intelligent play. I know in the beginning there, they really only had him throwing like short little hitch routes to Braden Johnson or to Tyron Wallace. And that was sort of the MO for them in the beginning. But overall, I'd say this offensive game plan was a little bit conservative today.
Yeah, it was interesting because from the opening snap, you didn't know whether it was going to be Spencer Sanders or Shane Ellingworth or who was going to be out there, right? You assumed it was going to be one of those two, but there was just that much ambiguity, right? Even with the offensive line, you look at the depth chart right here, and it still says the old guys' names, right? we weren't too sure, and overall, the O-line played definitely better.
Sure. And
Shane Ellingworth, you look at the stat line, and it doesn't look great, right? No. You see the interception, you see it not a lot of yards, and you see them not really throwing. But to me, I liked what Shane Ellingworth did a lot. His IQ, he was just smart, decision-making. And the IQ really stands out, right? The decisions, the ability not to make mistakes, right? The one interception was a mistake. Let's go back to film and see exactly what happened before I can really comment on that. But it obviously was a mistake, no doubt. But that's all you really had, right? Besides that, you had smart decisions. But when you look at the game plan, I don't know exact number, but I think the rushes doubled the amount of pass attempts, something around that. And I think that just shows that just really talks about the fact that your defense played dominantly, right? And this was so different, for all aspects, right? You think of OSU, you think of an offensive team, right? But that first play or that first, second, third drive, whatever it was, where they were 4th and 2, decided to punt it or field goal.
Yeah.
That was just weird for a Mike Gundy offense, right? You didn't see that. Casey Dunn even talked about how they just didn't want to screw it up because you had such a defense playing so well. And in a game like this, that's kind of the approach you take, right? Because say you screw it up, right, near that red zone, you get the other team gets the ball 20 yards, and they just score. It's too easy that way, especially when you're forcing that team to push down 80 yards, 100 yards each play, 90 yards, whatever, right? But I thought Shailen was smart, definitely. There were definitely some good moments, and you saw the arm strength, you saw some great throws. But overall, I don't know how much I really question how bad Shane Ellingworth really played.
Yeah.
I think if you unlock it a little more, he definitely was better, because you saw in that very first play, launched down to Dylan Stoner,
Of course, yeah.
They were showing confidence. There was a lot of plays where you saw that, and to me, like, that was like, oh, wow, for a true freshman, because we saw Spencer Sanders, right? A lot of times, 3rd and long, you just want to run the ball, right? Mike Gundy, I mean, I don't want to, but Mike Gundy definitely wanted to run that ball, right? And that's what you saw a lot of times. That was frustrating last year. With Shane Ellingworth, you kind of assumed that was going to be the same case. But at times, they just came out, right? First play of the game, with a true freshman, you just throw a deep ball.
Launches it to Dylan Stoner.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. That's pretty crazy. But I thought he played pretty solid. I just think overall the game script went away from his statistical improvement, right? But that was okay because of the context. This is a changing OSU team, right? The defense, the defense. And when you think about how good this defense is, how this run game's operating, 200-yard rushers. Even though Chuba Hubbard struggled, he struggled by Chuba Hubbard standards. Right? 100 yards, 101 yards. In what book is 101 yards a bad game,
Exactly.
Right? It's not like he had 40 carries either. It was just like that. And it was just one of those things, right? True freshman, the situation you look at, they didn't really take the chains off, right? That's the fact of the matter.
It's definitely the fact of the matter. And you look at his carries versus L.D. Brown's carries, for Chuba Hubbard, rather, and you look at it as, L.D. Brown had that 66-yard touchdown.
Right.
That's sort of how he's that home run hitter now. He has that potential to do that each and every time. Because you saw it against Tulsa. You saw it almost twice against Tulsa, actually. One of them didn't count. And then you saw one that counted today, and he did that little Thurman Thomas dance afterwards and was really celebrating there. So I thought it was interesting on the day, honoring one of the great running backs at OSU. You see it in the West End Zone there, the 34 Thurman Thomas, how he was able to do that. And Chuba Hubbard, too, like you said, had a great game, too. Don't get it twisted. He had a great game still. It just wasn't maybe up to his par, but he set that bar up so high because of that. And yeah, they both had a touchdown each, right? And they both had over 100 yards. And we even saw Desmond Jackson in there a little bit, right?
It was good to see him a few plays. But man, L.D. Brown, he only had 11 carries, I believe. That first round was explosive. And he's not just a home run hitter, right? Because obviously he has that ability, like you said. But there's some guys that are just home run hitters that just have that speed to break away, but aren't able to operate in that, get you that yard or two. With how big he is and how his cut ability is nowadays, his elusiveness, it's crazy, right? You remember that half-yard run? That was one of the most exciting half-run yards I've ever seen in my life.
You heard the guy in the other box over there, he was screaming.
Going wild. And it was awesome because that's the type of stuff you need from a running back who is running in between the tackles, right? It's football. You don't always, obviously you want 80 yards every play, but you're not going to get it, right? And when you plan as a coordinator, as a coach, you're looking for that 2-3 yards, bring the defense up, and then launch it over. And West Virginia, and the way they played, constantly 2 high safeties, right? You saw a lot of it. They were playing really deep. They didn't want Tylen Wallace and these receivers to burn them.
No.
And as long as that was happening, you keep running the ball. And say you don't get the first down, that's okay because you have a defense that's dominating.
Exactly, and you saw that from OSU as well in terms of their defense, because we talk about the offense, we talk about how there were flashes of greatness in this offense today, but you also heard Casey Dunn after the game, who was describing as how it's so great to have a defense like this to be able to almost bail them out in these types of situations. And so let's talk about and deep dive into this defense a little bit. We saw some weird things today. First of all, what a performance from Rodarius Williams in that secondary. Oh my God, yeah. He really had a phenomenal performance. I think it was, he had 4 pass breakups, and it was, what a performance. Stuck on his guys all day. Every single one of them, it felt like.
Yeah, like he was elite in coverage today, right? And he stuck like glue on Sam James, who was their number 1 receiver. He stuck really well. His coverage is showing out his ability to press coverage as well. But the thing you really love about Rodarius, at 6'1", he is an excellent tackler. Right. Tackling is one of the most underrated aspects of cornerbacks, right? Because it's not always one of the flashy things needed per se, but if you're able to tackle, because here's the thing, if you're a cornerback, you're not always going to, when you go up against talented receivers, you're not always going to shut them down, right? At times, you're going to have to play a little bail coverage and then come and make the tackle. At times, they're going to catch it, but if you're a surefire tackler who can bring guys down, especially receivers in space, especially with the Big 12, the way they operate,
Right.
getting receivers in space, one-on-one cornerbacks. If you can tackle, that makes you even better.
Yeah.
And Rodarius can really do that. And he's excellent across all aspects. Watching him the first 2 games, there's no doubt in my mind he's going to play on Sundays.
Yeah, exactly, right. And the way that West Virginia attacked this defense today was they had a lot of these slant routes. They had a lot of these crossing routes, like where it was these receivers trying to get inside leverage, right? These Sam James, you talk about TJ Simmons, you talk about all these guys.
Winston
and
Wright.
yeah, exactly, yeah. And there was one play in particular that I noticed. It was in the 4th quarter, okay? West Virginia was charging down the field. They got a 14-yard pass to Sam James, and Rodarius was on him. And Rodarius, you could almost see him. He had that intensity, he had that fired up passion in him. He was like, I can't let that happen again. So 3 plays later, he stepped up. Same exact route from Sam James, who was doing that almost all day. West Virginia was doing that all day. That's Jarrett Dagey's strong point, is those little short intermediate passes type of deal. And he really did actually a pretty good job with that today.
No doubt.
But Rodarius was able to step there, and that really sort of took momentum out of that drive. What could have been a 20-17 game after that point was now a 20-13 game, and OSU was able to take control from the rest of the way.
When you look at the game as a whole, you saw the game plan of Jim Knowles, right? Bring a lot of pressure, which he really didn't do a lot of last year, and for good reason, right? But they brought a lot of cover zero, a lot of single high safety, a lot of times where you would stack the box. What does that do? That leaves your guys one-on-one. It worked a lot, right?
Right.
But then a lot of times you saw these slot receivers get the slant route, right? You're going to hear that all the time after this game. Cover the slant, right? It's not that easy.
It's hard. It's more
hard.
difficult.
But you're also, the reason it's so open is because you're forcing your slot guys and your cornerbacks to play a little off because you're in such coverage. Because if you don't, you're getting burned 80 yards every single play on the slant, right? Because he's just going to get by you and go. But that coverage, what you're doing most plays when you're putting that pressure with cornerbacks like Rodarius and Jarek Bernard Converse playing so well, is you're sticking those guys and you're making life for them really difficult, right? And for the most part, it worked. Like, I'll say that much. It really worked. And overall, the game plan was kind of that. And what you saw from West Virginia's offense was a lot of the slant routes, the quick hitches, those sort of things, short to intermediate routes, right? That's what you said about Jarrett Dagey, and that's what he excels at. But a lot of, when you saw the 0 on the score sheet, or however much they had at halftime, I believe it was 0 or 3 or something.
That did not explain the full picture.
Because when you watch this game, it really didn't feel like a defensive slugfest, right?
No.
Even when it was 0-0 after the first quarter. It didn't, because West Virginia actually dominated the time of possession.
They did.
I think it was 18-10 or something, close to the halftime. They dominated time possession. They held the ball a lot more, and they didn't just hold the ball. They were rushing down, right? They were getting down the field, and what happened was OSU started making plays in the crucial times, right? Like they did against Tulsa. Except Tulsa, you saw 3 and outs, and you saw those crucial 3rd, 4th stops. But OSU was bringing coverage on third and long. They were bringing 8 guys, 7 guys, whatever, on blitzes, which is a lot. And then Jarrett Dagey couldn't make passes against single coverage, right? It worked. The process worked. And then as they were rushing down the field, eventually you get them in a 3rd and long, right? Then OSU plays defense. They stick again on single coverage, and it worked, right? And that's why, even if you give up 500 yards, what matters in the end is the point total, right? And it wasn't just a fluke of, oh, wow, they suck on 3rd down. It was OSU's game plan working. Yeah,
exactly. And you look at OSU, they have LD as their running back.
Right.
Well, West Virginia has led D. and he was a guy who was really killing it. I thought maybe you might even see at the beginning, like a lot of people might think last week, okay, we going against Eastern Kentucky, it might be a fluke in that game. But no, he really proved it today against a really stout OSU defense. He was able to like you said, physicality, running between the tackles, getting these elusive type of moves, and he's going to be a threat in the Big 12 this year. It was tough for OSU to stop him today.
Yeah, when I know we did our podcast a few days ago, and I watched Letty Brown against Eastern Kentucky, regardless of the opponent, he just reminded me of Derrick Henry light.
Right.
Not exactly, but you saw that sort of strength and bounceability. His kind of, he didn't look like the biggest guy, but you could see that elusiveness and that shiftiness, right? And that explosiveness right out of those holes, right? He would just go against Eastern Kentucky. This game, I'll say this: if OSU had made tackles, Letty Brown would have probably had 20, 30 yards.
Yeah.
But that's not to say OSU didn't make tackles well. It's not that they missed tackles. I really don't think so.
No.
I think it's just that Letty Brown was so strong, right? Because Brendan Evers is in the backfield. You saw that all the time. D-line got a lot of penetration. Guys were in great position to tackle him. But Letty Brown just broke through tackles. He's shifty. He was strong. And that's a lot of strength. And I also said this in the podcast. Stiff arm. right? that signature stiff arm, he was stiff arming everyone. Think about it. Brendan Evers, 2-yard loss, should be a 2-yard loss. You stuff him down. That's Brendan Evers. That's a big guy.
He's huge.
That's a big guy, but still. Letty Brown was awesome, and he was honestly the reason the first half, 3 quarters, this West Virginia offense stayed on track, because every time OSU was bringing coverage, right? They were bringing cover 0. They were stacking the box. They were bringing a lot of pressure, and Jared Diggy had to make these one-on-one throws, and he wasn't. On third down especially, it was a struggle. The pass game, it was only those short little hitches, but for the most part, OSU was rallying to make tackles. So Jared Diggy wasn't really able to push the needle with the pass game, but the run game was like this, and that's what really kept this team in it. But eventually, OSU just started getting on those tackles, because Letty Brown's not going to make that many broken tackles. I know I made a joke at the beginning saying Letty Brown will have more broken tackles than Chuba Hubbard. Probably never serious, but definitely not serious. But he was just killing the broken tackle game. But it's not that easy, right, to keep on doing it time and time again, because like I said, right, I genuinely think it would have 20, 30, 40 yards if not for all those broken tackles.
Exactly. Yeah.
It was awesome, though.
And OSU might run into some running backs like that this year. But time will tell to see how much they improve in that aspect. Yeah. And it's not even, I feel like it's not even you can improve it. You know what I mean? It's like, they're guys that it's like an unstoppable force meets an immovable object type of deal, right? Exactly. And you will see that so many times this season. But OSU, what a fantastic performance from their defense today.
Definitely.
Can I mention one last thing about the defense before we head out? You know I got to talk about my boy Tyron Irving. Okay, what a showstopper! Wow, I am the #1 fan of the Tyron Irving fan club. The way he was, Trace Ford was able to strip that ball away. Tyron Irving was able to scoop it up and literally just seemed like he was just walking, casually over there, and that was the. Oh my gosh, the Lineman of the Year award goes to Tyron Irving, the way he was able to do that, and Jim Knowles was...
Do you see his name down here? I don't either.
It's not in the depth chart at all. Yeah, it was really such a fascinating thing, and Jim Knowles gave us a glimpse of how he was looking at that from the press box. He said it was like a guy yelling at his TV screen. Yeah, Tyron Irving. What a performance. What else could he say about it?
That's all.
That's all you got to say about it. And that's all we have for you guys today. Thank you for tuning in to the O'Colly's coverage of OSU versus West Virginia. Join us this next week and every other week for all of our coverage and more. Visit O'Colly.com. I'm Novozinsky, joined here as always by Sudeep Tumma. Have a great day.